आपने ये लाइट क्यों डाल दिया सडनली? Why did you on this light?
No. Ma'am, is it visible now?
Yeah, it is visible. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Perfect. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, we are
Thank
done
you,
with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have Shruti?
Redmi dite. ये नहीं ते ना उसरा लेगी तुझे मोबाइल अंचे.
Okay, we'll be beginning in 1 more minute. Preeti Naidu, can you hear me? Preeti Naidu, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am here.
Okay, fine. Okay, it's 11:05. Okay, good morning everybody. It's 11:05 and we are going to begin now. Today we are having 6 paper presenters. I hope I'm audible to everybody. Am I audible? Am I audible? Can everyone
Yes,
hear?
madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are having 6 presenters as I've already shared it on the screen here. First one, we have Preeti Naidu, then Sardar Hussain, then Sharanagowda Patil, Shruti S, Kusuma and Ramya CG. This whole session is going to be recorded. Let me bring it to your notice. We will be having, we'll share this presentation with our judges who are unable to participate now due to various reasons. I can't tell them here, but we are sharing these videos with them. So they're going to judge it on the basis of their real time whenever they are free. Okay, I hope all of you are aware of this. Okay, we are recording this session. So first we are going to start with Preeti Naidu. Your time will be 10 plus 2 minutes, and after 10 minutes the session will be open for discussion. Any participant can interact with the presenter. Okay, Preeti Naidu, kindly unmute yourself and switch on your video, and you can present.
Okay. Ma'am, is it visible?
Yes, it's clear and visible. You can go ahead.
Yes, visible.
Yes, visible. Okay, thank you. Good morning to all. I am very thankful to the Department of Chemistry, IDSG Government Science College, Chikmagaluru, for giving this opportunity. Today I am going to present my paper entitled Identification of the Active Molecule from the Leaves of Vitex sativissima. So, as in the previous session, Dr. Abhishek sir was beautifully explained the importance of the natural product by considering the examples of turmeric, lemon, etc. So, Vitex sativissima is one of the such medicinal plant that plays a various important role, and it is used as local healers. So it mainly used the plant leaves and barks are mainly used to heal wounds, ulcer, allergies, and worm infections, etc. So the main content of this study is the plant processing, phytochemical screening, antibacterial activity, isolation using column chromatographic technique, and spectral analysis. So I've already discussed about the introduction part. So let's move on to the plant processing. So I collected this plant from the Hosnagar Taluk, Shimoga district. So the plants were washed with the running water and shade dried. This was over a period of 3 weeks. Then the plant leaves were chopped into fine powder. Then this is subjected to Soxalate extractor operator. So using the different solvents like petroleum ether, ethyl acetate, and ethanol. So the obtained crude extracts were evaporated in room temperature. So the obtained crude extract was further subjected to phytochemical screening. So just to know the basic components which are present in that plant. So like carbohydrates, amino acids, reducing sugars, tannins, saponins, flavonoids, coumarins, etc. So the next one is the antibacterial activity. So by knowing what are the components present in that, it is considered for antibacterial activity. So antibacterial activity was carried out by agar disc diffusion method. So in this method, about 1 mg of each extract, that is petroleum ether, ethyl acetate, and ethanol. So each extract was dissolved in 1 ml of DMSO. So and 5 millimeters of Whatman filter paper was dipped in each solvent and dried. So this was placed on the surface of the nutrient agar medium. Over a period of 24 hours at 48 hours for 27 degrees Celsius temperature. So the zone of inhibition was measured. So among this, ethyl acetate extract was exhibiting a remarkable zone of inhibition. So that this was considered for isolation. So as we know that isolation means separation, that is mixture of component can be separated into individual. So by using column chromatography, here I am using solid silica gel as a solid phase and petroleum ether, ethyl acetate, and methanol as a mobile phase. So this comes under the class of adsorption chromatography. So the ethyl acetate extract, about 3 gram of ethyl acetate extract was dissolved in petroleum ether solvent and eluted in the pre-filled column. So based on their affinity, so different bands are obtained. So on similar spots, the solvents are pulled together. So the similar spots are then pulled together. The obtained extract was evaporated and recrystallized. This was further sent into the spectral studies. So in the spectral studies, I have carried out IR spectra, IR analysis, proton NMR, C13 NMR, and mass analysis. So in IR spectrum, so it is observed that there is a broad peak observed at 3,424 centimeters inverse. So this indicates the presence of free hydroxyl group, and at the region of 1,590, so this indicates the presence of carbonyl carbon. So in nuclear magnetic resonance spectra and C13 NMR spectra was recorded in DMSO solvent. So the chemical shifts are reported on delta scale and with the internal standard tetramethylsilane. So here we can observe there is a doublet of 2 peaks. So this these 2 peaks are doublets are indicates the presence of proton present in the aromatic region. So and there is a broad peak at the region of 10. So this indicates the presence of free hydroxyl group OH proton, and at the region of 12 to 13, so there is also a broad peak. So this indicates the presence of carboxylic acid carbon. So likely in C13 proton NMR, there is an observance of 5 signals. So at the 5 signals, at 167.5, so the peak which indicates the presence of COOH group. And at 162.162, so that indicates the presence of C1 carbon. That is, this is the C1 carbon. The maximum signal, that is at 167. So this is the one carboxylic acid, and at 162, so this is the first carbon of the benzene ring. And at 131.94, this is the peak for this carbon, the carbon which is attached to the OH group. And at the region of 121, so this is for C2 and C6 carbon. And at 115, so that the signal indicates at the C3 and C5 carbon. So this was further confirmed by mass spectrometry. So the M by Z value shown that at 137.90 there is a peak observance. So this is the total mass of the found molecule. So overall on the spectral analysis confirmed that the molecule which is present is the para-hydroxybenzoic acid or the 4-hydroxybenzoic acid. So conclusion is this molecule may responsible for the antibacterial activity. So thank you.
Okay, thank you Preeti Naidu for your presentation. Now the session is open for discussion. Anyone who wishes to ask any question can unmute yourself and can speak. Is there anyone who wants to ask any questions? Okay, I assume there is nobody who wants to ask any question, but I will ask you one question, Preeti. Can you tell me what type of extraction you have carried out for this?
So, ma'am, oxalate extraction.
What is the solvent which you used?
Ma'am, I have used from non-polar solvent to polar. That is petroleum ether, ethyl acetate, and ethanol. 3 different solvents were used.
Okay, which extract did you get this particular compound?
Yeah, ethyl acetate extract, ma'am.
Ethyl acetate extract.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then you have evaporated it and then you have done this analysis.
Yes, ma'am. Further, it was subjected to spectral studies.
Okay. How many grams did you begin with and how many grams did you end with getting this compound?
Ma'am, I have started from 3 grams,
Mm-hmm.
but the benzoic acid, the last final component, was obtained as a very minute quantity, that is in milligrams.
Milligrams. Did you do any other analysis for presence of acid functional group?
Ma'am, I have just done by esterification.
Esterification. Okay. Did you check its solubility?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, it is soluble in a mixture of solvent, that is petroleum ether and ethyl acetate.
Petroleum ether and
Mixture.
Okay. Did you recrystallize it?
Yeah, ma'am.
What was the solvent you used?
Yeah, petroleum ether in a large quantity, ethyl acetate in minute.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your nice presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any other participants who would like to interact? Any other? Okay, I think we will move on to the next presenter. Preeti, kindly unmute yourself, switch off your video and stop presenting for the next presenter.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have the next presenter with us, Mr. Sardar Hussain. Mr. Sardar, kindly go on with your presentation. You have 10 plus 2 minutes.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, one and all. Dr. Pratima, my slides are visible?
Yes, yes, your slides are visible, Sardar.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon, a very good morning to one and all present who are here. Myself, Sardar Hussain. I'm working as Assistant Professor, Department of Biotechnology, Government Science College, Chitradurga. At the outset, first of all, I congratulate Dr. Pratima Madam, Organizing Secretary of this wonderful webinar series she has conducted. And I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to present a paper entitled to identify a plausible inhibitor of SARS-CoV-2 protease 6LU7 and the spike enveloped glycoprotein 6-MoJ from active compounds of Nigella sativa and in silico approach. We are somewhere sitting in a very remote place like Chitradurga, and what we can do is to address this current pandemic. We thought, why can't we use this in silico technology? Though this technology does not require any sophisticated wet lab laboratories, but still the studies are validated. So the docking is all about how a ligand molecule, it's a prediction study, how a ligand molecule is going to bind with the target, and then we can study. First, we can come to an conclusion that whether the ligand is going to bind in the active pocket or into the receptor, or it is not binding. If it is binding, what kind of interactions it is making, what are the type of the bonds are being formed, what is the energy, all these things we can predict by this particular technology called a flawless technology called as molecular docking. There are several softwares available to do this, to perform this. There are several platforms available to do this docking studies. In this present study, we have used MOE software to do the molecular docking of this particular SARS-CoV-2 target proteins. Yeah, I'd like to start with this wonderful quote. This was published in New York Times, April 3rd, 2020. A virus is simply a piece of bad news wrapped up in a protein. How wonderfully they have described. Virus is a simple piece of, simply a piece of bad news wrapped up in a protein. It was defined by biologists Jean and Peter in 1977. Majority of the virus, any virus, they are pathogenic, they are not friends. The background of the study is COVID-19, known as novel coronavirus and referred as neocoronary pneumonia provoked as SARS-CoV-2, which has evolved into an pandemic threat to the health of the public. The focal point of this outbreak was found to be Wuhan, Hubei province in China. The virus is of zoonotic form, immensely transmissible, and could cause mild to severe infections of the respiratory tract. Symptoms include fever, fatigue, muscle aches, dry cough, shortness of breath, and in certain instances could cause pneumonia. In critical cases, it causes acute respiratory distress and gastrointestinal distress and death. The two coronaviruses related crises in humans exist since 2003. SARS-CoV-1 was set in 2003, and the MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, bearing a fatality rate of 35%. This is the structure of SARS-CoV-2. We have two types of proteins here. One is the NSPs and the SPs. SPs are the structural proteins. They are nothing but the spike, membrane, and the non-structural proteins are, we have NSP1 to NSP16. NSPs are non-structural proteins, and we have the structural proteins are the spike protein, the membrane protein, and the envelope protein, and the nucleocapsid protein. So this is the schematic of coronavirus. What is the role of these various proteins? The S protein, it is going to bind to the host receptor, so which are humans are the host, animals are the host, where this how this virus is going to bind to the cell with the help of a receptor called as ACE2 receptor, angiotensin converting enzyme, and the N protein is involved in the viral integration. E protein facilitates assembly, envelope formation, and budding, and N protein has a critical role in genome packaging into virus and effective viral replication. And again, here we have the open reading frame 5' to 3'. We have different types of open reading frames which codes for different viral proteins. SARS-CoV-2 is a type of positive sense single-strand RNA virus with a genome of approximately 29,000 to 30,000 nucleotides, and is characterized by proteins such as spikes, envelope, nucleocapsid, RNA-dependent RNA polymerases, and proteases. In general, the spike glycoprotein of the coronavirus consists of two subunits, S1 and S2 subunit, which mediates the binding of the virus with the host cell receptor. Previous studies on SARS-CoV-2 suggested that the interaction of angiotensin converting enzyme to ACE2 host cell receptor and SARS-CoV is mediated through spike protein subunits. Recently, it has also been reported that COVID-19 occurs due to similar interactions between viral spike proteins and ACE2, pointing out a vital role of spike protein in the viral attachment and entry, as suggested by Shang et al. Therefore, blocking these interactions offers potential as target for development of drugs and vaccines. The main protease, MPRO, is an essential enzyme required for the polyprotein or polypeptide processing. Blocking the activity of main protease would block viral replication. So these are the, so though the virus is having around a genome of around 30,000 base pairs, and it has around 30 proteins, out of which we know some are NSPs and some are SPs. We know the function of some NSPs, and we don't know the function of some NSPs we don't know, hence we call them as mystery proteins. And some proteins are structural proteins, which are nothing but the spike, and other proteins we call them as structural proteins. So this is the diagram. It explains the role of ACE2. Why we have selected these two particular targets means because these two particular targets are very, very important in how this virus enters the human cells. So that is why we have selected this receptor in this our study. These two proteins we have selected. So how this SARS-CoV-2 enters and binds, how the spike protein is going to bind to the ACE2 receptor of the target or of the human cell. So spike protein plays a very, very important role in binding. Once it binds, it enters into the host cell with the help of ACE2 receptor. So that is why we have selected this particular target, and we have also selected another important target, that is protease of the SARS-CoV-2. We are predicting that, we are hypothesizing that once we are going to block these two, if we have any ligands that can block these two, we can control or we can come out with some promising drug. However, inhibiting the ACE2 catalytic pocket through small molecules can alter its conformation such that it can hinder the entry of SARS-CoV-2 into the cell. Hence, M-protease is used as a target to constrain virus replication, while the ACE2 receptor aids to block the entry of virus 2. Just by targeting these two potential proteins, we can get some positive results. So these are the hopes. Two drug targets, protease and spike protein receptor binding domains, are selected, and docking studies are performed by using molecular operating environment software, MOE software. This is the workflow. First, we have retrieved the protein PDB6LU7 and PDB6MOJ. See, normal names we have different normal names we'll be having, like we'll be having NSP1, NSP2, non-structural protein 1, non-structural protein 2, like that. But the same protein in protein data bank, we have a different ID. That ID we have mentioned here, 6LU7 and 6MOJ. Then once we retrieve the protein, and then we have to prepare the protein by MOE software, and then we have to predict the active site of that particular protein with the help of site finder option in the MOE. Then we have to prepare the ligand by using ChemSketch, and then we have to load the molecules into the active site of the protein. Then we need to predict the binding poses for the protein ligand interactions. Yeah, these are the two proteins which we have retrieved from PDB. One is the main protease, and the other one is the spike receptor binding domain bound with ACE2. So these are the two proteins which we have retrieved. And our plant of interest is, we have selected Nigella sativa, which belongs to the family Ranunculaceae. This plant is possesses many medicinally important active molecules, which is well known to us. What we have done is, these structures are available in drug bank or any other database, drug data bank. We can retrieve these structures, and these are our ligands. We are just checking how these ligands interact with these two proteins. One is 6LU7 and the other one is 6MOJ, which are very, very important. So this can be done by using molecular docking. So molecular docking is used to predict the binding poses for the protein ligand interactions. The proteins are, one is a spike protein and another one is a main protease of the SARS-CoV-2. And ligands are, we have selected around 9 molecules, 9 active molecules which are present in Nigella sativa. The problem with the natural compounds is, we know Ayush, it has a very big history of Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani medicine. We have a lot of rich history, but we don't know the mechanism of action of these drugs, what is going to happen. But somehow, by using this technology called as molecular docking, we can find some prediction, we can do some prediction whether the active compounds, in what way they are interacting with the targets, or in what way they are interacting with the bacteria, or in what way they are interacting with the pathogens. Different types of interactions depend on the atomic distances with the ligand, and amino acids can also be determined. Energy minimization of the protein and ligands, positioning of the ligands at the protein's active site is performed. A molecular docking module in MOE is used to determine the correct conformation and configuration of the ligand in order to produce minimum energy structures. Once this energy minimization is being done, then these ligands are being loaded for the MD, molecular dynamic studies, in the MOE software. Certain parameters has to be set, and then we have to load the molecules. Among the acquired conformations, the one with the lowest docking score has been selected to determine the binding orientation of the complexes and ligands. These are the results what we have obtained. Out of 9 molecules which we have selected, and we have done the docking study with the 2 important proteins. Docking conformations of, so out of 9 compounds, 2 compounds, one compound is nigellicine and the other compound is nigellicimine N oxide. They are going to interact with the main protease of the 6LU7, and we can see nigellicine is interacting with the amino acids phenylalanine 8, isoleucine 106, glutamine 110, phenylalanine 294, serine 158, valine 104, isoleucine 152 and lysine 104. So we can see, so this is nothing but the pocket pocket are the active site pocket of this particular protein, and free amino acids what we are seeing, and how our ligand or this niglicine is going to interact with this, and what kind of bonds it is making. So it is making some hydrogen bonds, it is making, there is a bond here, and what is the distance we can see here, 2.75, 3.08, 3.08 and 2.45, and how this niglicine is interacting with the atoms, and how it is making hydrogen bonds we can see here. Similarly, niglicine N oxide is also interacting with certain amino acids in the pocket of 6LU7 protein, which is the main protease of SARS-CoV-2, and it is having, we can calculate the distance, and we can also make where it is making the bond. So here we can see the bonds are between niglicine N oxide and ONE, glutamine 110, and we have threonine. We have an interaction at threonine. So on the other hand, we have the result of the docking analysis with spike receptor binding domain 6-MOJ, which is how our what is going to happen at this particular receptor when we are going to load it with nigellamine A5 and nigellamine A1. These are the two molecules which are having, out of the 9 molecules, nigellamine A5 and A1, they are interacting nicely with 6-MOJ pocket. So here we can see the interactions at arginine 403 and glutamine, lysine and tyrosine, serine and tyrosine, glycine and phenylalanine, asparagine and tyrosine. So these are the interactions which we are seeing with nigellamine. Similarly, with nigellamine A1, we are seeing interactions between 4 amino acids. We can see the bonds, how the bonds are being formed. So in summary, considering the global threat imposed by SARS-CoV-2 and with no legalized antiviral agent for its cure, the present study provides insight to develop novel ligands from the active compound of Nigella sativa. The results demonstrate that niglicine and niglicimine N oxide against main protease and nigellamine A5 and nigellamine A1 against spike glycoprotein are the key constituents from Nigella sativa, and has greater interactions with best binding affinity. For further research conducted should be more focused on the compound's clinical efficacy. Thus, these novel approaches should be expedited for treating COVID-19 and additionally strengthen the usage of Nigella sativa biocompounds as antidotes for many diseases. So thank you, one and all, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sardar. And now the session is open for discussion. If you have any queries, kindly unmute yourself and you can pose the questions. Yes, another call for all the participants. Do you have any doubts, any queries? You can unmute yourself. Okay, Sardar, I think there are... Oh, okay, please carry
on. Sardar sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's audible.
Sir, I would like to ask one question to you.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the formation of the complex with ligands.
Yes, sir.
Which metal ion can bind with your ligand during the complex formation process?
During the complex formation process, which metal ion?
Which metal ion? Because you mentioned it is a ligand, so can it bind with the metal in your process?
Yeah, it may bind, sir. Yeah, metal ions. Okay. It may bind, sir. But here we are focusing on drug molecules, sir.
Drug molecule. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, do we have any other participants who would like to interact? Okay, I think Sardar, I had the same doubt in mind as that of Dr. Madhukar, sir. In chemistry, we consider as if you have a ligand, we say that there must be a metal, and a metal ligand combines to give a complex. I think that thing is slightly different in when it comes to biotechnology or molecular biology. I think you are meaning that there will be binding between protein amino acids in the protein and your
Certainly.
particular compound. So there is a binding which will block further activity, if I'm not wrong. That's what you meant.
Certainly.
Okay. This is a docking study, and we had a very good presentation, and your scientific research is in relevance to the present situation.
Pandemic. Yes, ma'am.
And congratulate you for this, having done such a work now. I have one more doubt. From where did you get these molecules of the particular compound?
Ma'am, this molecule, see, ma'am, this particular docking study, virtual study, we collect everything from the database.
Okay, the plant has these chemical compounds already reported.
Yeah. Everything. You can go to a website called as Drug Bank.
Yeah.
You will get the structures, or you can go to PubChem, where you can get the structures. So we have to retrieve the structures. You have to create a library. So it's a wonderful study, ma'am. Without any investment, you can do. I have 8 papers in this docking. Without anything in the without anything in this particular pandemic, what I did is I learned computers, I learned docking. Now this present study, it is accepted in Journal of Biomolecular Structure and Dynamics, which is published by Taylor and Francis. They have asked for a minor revision. This is accepted already. This work is accepted. We know that Nigella sativa is a wonderful plant and it has lot of compounds. We know the compound. We don't know the mechanism of action. So by doing docking, we can predict whether this particular active compounds, what is the impact, whether these alkaloids or these compounds, they are binding to which particular target. If they are binding, what is the impact? If they are not binding, what is the impact? All these things, just with some free softwares, we can get a very fantastic idea.
Okay. Sardar, how strong is the bond? That's my question to you. Did you check how strong the bond is? Is it reversible? It is non-reversible?
Ma'am, usually we look for hydrogen bonds. The strength of the bond depends upon the distance.
Yeah.
It is, see, in the tabular column, I think where I have mentioned the H distance, 3.18. It's in angstrom, 2.77. So first thing is, we will come to know if there is interaction. If our ligand or if our active molecule is going and binding, first thing we'll get an idea if it is binding. So where it is binding, how can we tell that it is binding in that particular area? That particular area we call it as an active site. Active site is confirmed by the presence of certain amino acids. Active site, there are softwares which will tell you active site prediction software. Or we can confirm an active site. Usually the active site of a protein or of this particular receptor or an enzyme, it will have a particular sequence of amino acids. By that particular sequence of amino acids, we can confirm that this is the active site. This is the first point. Second, your ligand or your active molecule, whether it is binding there. If it is binding there, what kind of interactions? If it is binding means, then there should be some interactions, van der Waals interactions, hydrogen bonds, or some other bonds you may look for. When we are talking about drug, hydrogen bonds are very, very important. So how many hydrogen bonds are formed? Because the drug should not be retained in the body. Once the activity is over, it has to be released out from the body. All these parameters are very, very important while we are looking for this thing. Wonderful software. We can predict a lot of things.
Thank you, Sardar. Dr. Ram, did you want to interact? I think I saw you unmute yourself. Dr. Ram Sevak Dubey, sir.
Yes, madam.
Kindly go ahead, sir. Kindly go ahead.
Just I'm interested to know that whether the active component that you isolated, have you identified some component?
Sir, greetings, sir. These compounds I have neither identified nor I have isolated. These molecules are present already in the drug bank. Anybody can download any molecule. You can work on this. These are certified molecules which are available. That is why we are giving the ID. Even the protein I have not synthesized. See, there is something called as protein
Okay, sir.
crystallography. These people, what they do is, we require a lot of sophisticated instrumentation facility to crystallize the structure of protein. So this is being done by some big institutes, Scripps Institute,
Correct, sir. Actually, there may be
European
some
molecular biology. They do
active
all
component.
this kind of, they do all this, and they load in a public repository. So from there we retrieve these structures. If I'm interested in one particular plant, by literature study, see, there are paper in ACS which will tell you about the docking study of garlic with SARS-CoV-2. See, everybody, we are consuming garlic as we are consuming some Ayurvedic Ayush Kada we are consuming. We don't know the mechanism of action, but somehow we are getting the what beneficial effect we are getting. So I thought, why can't we select some medicinal plant and work on this? The active components, lot of work has been done on Nigella sativa. Well-published papers are available. The molecules which I have selected from the literature, and I have looked for the literature, look for these molecules. I have selected the molecules. All the molecules I have taken. We can create a library of 1,000 molecules, 100 molecules like that. We can take these molecules and we can dock into our protein by using software.
Thank you, sir. Very good work, sir. Excellent work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Congrats, sir.
Thank you, Sardar. I think we stop with your presentation now.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we move on with the next presenter. Before we moving on, I will request you to kindly mute yourself and stop sharing video. And
Yes, ma'am.
I missed two questions from Kavya TD and Yuvraj for Preeti Naidu. Do we have Preeti there? Preeti?
Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions in the chat box for you. I missed it somehow. How do you prepare plant extracts for phytochemical analysis? I think we had dealt with this. You have done Soxhlet extraction. Kavya, I hope you know about Soxhlet extraction. That's how she does. Yuvraj has another question. What type of plants you take for study? And what is the conclusion from phytochemical analysis and bacterial studies? I think
Okay.
that's one.
Thank you, Yuvraj, for your question. So the basic components present in that confirm that the presence of flavonoids, alkaloids, different tests were performed, ma'am. Like Molish test, Salowski test, Lieberman test. So that confirms the presence of the active molecules. So that the steroids, alkaloids, etc. So the final structure, spectral analysis confirmed that the structure of the 4-hydroxybenzoic acid that may responsible for the antibacterial activity. So that's it, ma'am.
Okay. Yuvraj, are you satisfied with the answer? Do we have Yuvraj here? Yuvraj?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you okay with the answer?
Ma'am, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we shall move on with the third presenter. Do we have Sharan Gowda Patil, sir? Sharan Gowda Patil, sir? Okay. Do we have Shruti S? Miss Shruti S? Miss Shruti S, I can see you here. Miss Shruti S?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hello. Yeah. Do we have Sharan Gowda Patil, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Just a minute, Shruti. Do we have Sharan Gowda Patil, sir? Okay, Shruti, you can go ahead with presentation. Kindly turn on your video, unmute yourself, and then start presenting.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, Shruti, you are.
Okay, ma'am. Good morning, one and all. I'm Shruti from University of Kerala, Karivattam campus. I'm first year postgraduate student. The topic of my presentation is National Education Policy 2020, Challenges and its Opportunities. As we all know, the India's first education policy was passed and implemented in 1986. After the 34 years, the National Education Policy of India, which has been updated and revised and approved on 29 July 2020. The policy signifies a huge milestone for India's education system, and it has been great to be certainly make India an attractive destination for higher education worldwide. And this policy is based on the pillars of access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability. And it will transform India into a vibrant knowledge hub. And the new education policy 2020 emphasizes mainly on the systematic and institutional improvements, which gives more specifics to the regulations, governance, and the promotion of multidisciplinary academics. And several aspects of this plan is that to create many new opportunities for the higher education institutions, say for example, changes to the basic education system with India, which will be in Indian school leavers more prepared to directly enter a UK undergraduate program, and a new nationwide academic credit system. And next we move on to the challenges in the current higher education system. The first challenge which is faced by the higher education system is that the fragmented higher education ecosystem. And second, poor learning outcomes and development of cognitive skills of students. Here the teachers are not giving sufficient technologies or sufficient technical ideas how to come up with the cognitive skills of students. And the third one is that rigid inflexible separation of disciplines. Say for example, an art stream students cannot be studied any science related subjects or any other different subjects regardless of their disciplines. And the fourth one is that the lack of quality in higher education in socio-economically challenged areas. And the fifth one, low teacher and institutional autonomy to innovate and excel. And sixth one, inadequate career management and progression for faculty as well as for the institutional leaders. And the seventh one is lack of research funding across disciplines. But with the help of the NEP, we could know that nowadays we could see several research funding across various disciplines regarding science, commerce, or management, anything like that. And next we move on to the key highlights of the new National Education Policy 2020. The National Education Policy brings about a various range of changes in our education system as well as in higher education, aiming to improve with the goal of creation of greater opportunities for the individual employment. So the key highlights of this policy aimed at, first one is creating an higher education system consisting large and multidisciplinary universities and colleges with at least one or near to every district and more higher education institutions across India which offer their programs in local or Indian languages. And the second key highlights is that shifting from a rigid higher education curriculum to a flexible or multidisciplinary undergraduate education. Here the students can choose what kind of domain they are interested and they can choose the domains which they are interested. Here there is no rigidity is applicable. And the third one is that offering faculty and institutional autonomy. That is, the faculty and the institutions can choose what all subjects they have to include in their curriculum. And the fourth one is that revamping the curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and student support for enhanced students' experiences so that it could result in more career advancements in students' field also. And the sixth one is that improved governance of higher education institutions by high qualified independent boards having academic and administrative autonomy. And light, which has been given regulation by a single regulator for higher education system. And a goal of National Education Policy is to increase the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, including the vocation as well as the education, to 50% by 2030 from 26.3% as of 2018. So as per the survey, we could see that survey on 2018 shows only 26.3% growth has been declared so far. But our aim is to increase 50% by 2030, the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, which includes vocational as well as the other education also. And the National Education Policy will replace the fragmented nature of India's existing higher education system and instead It brings together the higher education institutions into a larger multidisciplinary universities, colleges, and other clusters. And for now, while the national education policy states that a system of graded autonomy based on accreditation will be adopted for colleges, which has been their aim is to transform them into an autonomous degree granting college or a constituent college of a university. And next we move on to the systematic change or effective governance structure for higher education institutions, which leads to transforming the regulatory structure. The key changes that the policy advocates around improving the governance standards in higher education institutions are: first one, for each higher education institution, there will be a board of governors consisting of highly qualified, competent, and dedicated individuals with proven capabilities and the qualifications. And the second one is that the board of governors of each institution will be empowered to govern the institution free of any political or external interference, which makes all the appointments, including that head of the institution, as well as to take all the decisions regarding their governance. And moving on to the conclusion of my study is that for our schools, the purpose is to make learning less stressful and more learner-oriented. So, with the help of the national education policy, we could see that it has been given a lots of changes in our educational system, and several aspects of this plan may create new opportunities for the higher education clusters also. Say for example, changes in basic education system, which will make Indian school leavers more prepared to directly enter a UK undergraduate program. That's all, ma'am. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to present my paper here.
Thank you, Shruti. Yes. Now the session is open for discussion. Do we have anyone who wants to interact? Kindly unmute.
Yes, I would like to ask one question, ma'am.
Sure, sir. Please carry on.
My question is, does this national education policy will affect on the appointment of faculties in universities and colleges?
No, sir. Actually, by the introduction of NEP, the opportunities for students as well as faculties has been increased. They would give more exposure in the field. Before NEP, they have given only they should study or they should teach only those things which has been instructed in the curriculum. But in NEP, it has been declared that they could able to teach or study in respect of student's point of view. They will be given more broader area of study. They could select every topic which they are interested. So it doesn't affect faculty as well as students. It will increases their exposure.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madhukar sir. Do we have anyone else? Sure. Anyone else? Shruti, yes, thank you for the nice presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you touch upon few aspects, like few people are telling this will affect rural students a lot because new education policy says any student strength below 1,000 should be closed, that college should be closed. So don't you think rural students will have to move to other higher cities?
Urban areas. Yes, ma'am.
We are going to eradicate the system of this rural education itself.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, as we all know, if we take a coin, they have two heads. That is two sides. That is head and tail. Likewise, if we adopt this national education policy, it will affect rural students in a bad way. But in terms of urban students or other students which are living in city areas, they will be getting more benefits from these policies. So, how we can overcome this? Overcome the stress or overcome the difficulties faced by rural students is that they would be given more facilities or should encourage more students in rural areas so that the enrollment of 1,000 can be increased to more numbers so that we could adopt NEP there.
Thank you, Shruti, for your inputs. As you said, every technology or every new policy will have its own pros and cons. And thank you for the presentation. Now we will move on to the next presenter. I think Sharanagoda Patil sir has joined. Sir, we shall have you at the last because we will now move on to Kusuma MH. Miss Kusuma MH.
Yes, ma'am.
Kindly switch on your video and then you can start presenting.
Okay, ma'am. Is my screen visible?
No, you're not at sharing. Kindly.
Hello?
No. Your screen is not visible. Neither are you visible, Kusuma. Kusuma, if it's okay with you, you kindly check with this. We will finish off with Ramya and come to you.
Okay, ma'am.
Ramya, are you there? Ramya?
Yeah, ma'am. Present.
Kindly go ahead. You can switch on your video and start presenting. Then we'll come back to Kusuma.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay. Can I start, ma'am?
Please do.
Okay. A warm good morning to one and all. I have been present today. So myself, Ramya, I'm a second year MSc student at UC Government College, Chikmagaluru. So today I'm giving a seminar about the concept that is the determination of vitamin C, ascorbic acid, in some wild edible fruits which are commonly available in Chikmagaluru district. So let's move to the first concept, that is about introduction. So here vitamin C is one of the very commonly known as the ascorbic acid, which acts as a very good antioxidant. Vitamin C is very much essential nutrient, and it is a micronutrient which play a vital role in producing the body to fight against some sort of infection, and also which inhibit the cardiovascular diseases and cancer. In the third point, you can see the structure of ascorbic acid, where its molecular weight is 176.12 gram per mole. And more than 90% of vitamin C in a human diet is supplied by fruits, especially the citric fruits like orange, gooseberry, tamarind, etc. So this all about the introduction part. In the next part is the methodology. In a methodology, we are using the simple titration method. Other else, we can also use another methods like chromatographic method. So many methods can be used, but they are all time consuming and they are costlier also. So because of that reason, we are here using a simple titration method itself. So in the titration method, we are seeing that two steps we have to take in here. That is, the first step is a collection of fruits, another one is a procedure. In a collection of fruits, wild fruits like star fruit, lemon, passion fruit, gooseberry, guava, tamarind, mundu. So these are all the wild fruits we are collected from nearby areas like Mudigere, Vastare, Teguru, Malenalli, Kotigahara. So these are the areas which are near to the Chikmagaluru district where we are collecting all these wild fruits. After collecting the fruits, they are washed with the water and they're skinned off and their seeds are removed. And later, 100 grams of fruits were accurately weighed and they are grinded in a juicer by adding a small amount of distilled water for several times. Later, the sample will be filtered and they should be collected in a volumetric flask, and the extract fruit solution should be made up for 100 ml. Later, to the 250 ml conical flask, we are adding a 20 ml of each fruit sample, 150 ml of distilled water with 1 ml of starch indicator. Here, so this solution is titrated against the iodine solution. So the titration is repeated until for obtaining a concordant value. So these are all about the procedure. So after doing the procedure, we came to the conclusion and the result we obtained here, the ascorbic acid content of the wild fruits were determined by titrometric analysis, and the results are summarized in the given following table. In the first column, we can see the fruit scientific names and the common names. And the third column, we can see the volume of iodine solution consumer and the volume of vitamin C content is present in a particular each wild edible fruits. So from the analysis, we came for the conclusion that vitamin C content was found to be highest in case of a tamarind, where it is about 93.33 mg per 100 gram. So, and the vitamin C was very low in kaffir lime, that is about 29 mg per 100 gram. So these are all about the conclusion we get from the result. And in case of a discussion, in the discussion, you can see the very easy and the clearable graph you can see here. You can see the concentration of ascorbic acid in a different white fruit sample. So when you observe the graph, it will be easily came to know that the high amount of ascorbic acid content is present in case of a Tamarindus indica, that is a tamarind, that is about 93.33, and it is very much low in case of a kaffir lime, that is Citrus ibis, that is about 29.9. And you're observing here the ascorbic acid content, the concentration, the various concentration of ascorbic acid contents in different fruits are found in order like tamarind, gooseberry, passion fruit, guava, star fruit, bitter orange, lemon, sweet crunchy, mundu, kaffir lime. Whereas the kaffir lime has the low concentration of vitamin C. So that is about the graph is clearly depicting that. And let's move for the last part, that is about the conclusion. So overall, what are the result obtained is clearly showing that the highest amount of tamarind is present, highest amount of vitamin C, that is the ascorbic acid, can be seen in the tamarind, and low, it is very much low in case of a 20 kaffir lime. So by consuming the locally available these wild fruits, we can easily get the vitamin C content to our body for the right physiological functions of the body, and for the improvisation of our immune system, we can easily get the vitamin C in these wild fruits. So the result of the study will providing the suitable guide to the population for the selection of a fruits with the high content of vitamin C. So nowadays, due to the improvisation and the hybridization technology, we are getting the fruits in the markets. But instead of using those fruits, if we concentrate towards the wild fruit, they're having a rich amount of vitamin C and the ascorbic acid, which is really helpful for the immune system of our body. And also, we may know that deficiency of vitamin C is mainly causes scurvy, that is the bleeding, swelling of gums, and finally it leads to the losing of teeth. And also so many respiratory problems is also caused due to the deficiency of vitamin C. So for all those problems, to get over all those problems, we can by consuming a vitamin C rich fruits, by having a rich foods, we can easily come over from all those diseases. So for that reason also, we can use a vitamin C content rich fruits. And also vitamin C rich content fruits is also used, not only fruits, vitamin C content is mainly used for the treatment of cardiovascular diseases, and also it is used for some of cancer and also for a fits patient. So these are all about my concept, and yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity given, and thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Ramya. And now the session is open for discussion.
Okay.
If anyone has any
Okay,
doubts.
Ramya, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I will.
Very good work done by you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I would like to ask you one question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You have performed iodometric titration. Am I correct?
No, sir. No, sir. It's yes, sir. Iodometric.
Iodometric titration.
Yes, sir.
So to perform the iodometric titration, we require iodine, and to prepare the iodine solution, we require potassium iodide.
Yes, sir.
And the cost of the potassium iodide is too much high.
Yes,
in
sir.
your introduction, you said this method is cheaper method as compared to other methods.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah.
So how can you say that?
Sir, by comparing to previous methods, what I explained you, sir. So compared to that, this method was quite little less time consuming and less easier, sir. Because of that reason, it's better method, sir. Hello.
But in your method, ma'am, because we have to perform the titration, so there are some titration error can be arises.
Yes, sir. It may.
Or human error can be arises.
Sir,
And
maybe
particularly when you are doing the same experiment with the help of the instrument, sophisticated instrument,
Yes.
then we are getting the accurate results.
Sir, yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yes, do we have any other people? Yes, doctor.
One more question, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Actually, as per the literature, in tamarind, till now we found 32 mg per 100 mg sample of this ascorbic acid. In your studies, it is shown 93 mg. How it is possible? Which are the species you use for that? Is it wild, or is there any modified variety of this tamarind?
Yeah, sir. It's basically a wild yield, sir. It's a tamarind indica. It's a wild yield. In case of a wild yield, we can see a rich quantity of vitamin C. That is, the ascorbic acid is very rich in case of a wild species. The species I am using is here Tamarindus indica. Hello, sir. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Dr. Patil, do you have any further queries?
No issues. Fine. Continue. Let us.
Okay. Do we have any other people interacting? Okay. As Dr. Madhukar and Dr. Patil said, yes, this is a costly method because potassium iodide and iodine, and it is not environmental safe also. Maybe Ramya, you should try to do this analysis using instruments as sir told, so that when you do instrumental analysis, you can overcome all these errors, personal errors and experimental errors. There are different types of errors. So you can overcome all of them, and you can have a safe research because you are still a young MSc student. When you enter research, you have to check all those things, okay? And as sir told, reported, there will be a few amounts which are reported in the literature. So you are supposed to first do a thorough literature checkup before you give any results, okay? The high results may be because of the errors in your experiment or anything else also.
Maybe.
Because, okay, you can incorporate those corrections, and then maybe you can work better in your future also. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now kindly stop sharing. And
I have one doubt.
Yeah, please, Preeti.
Ma'am, this can be done by easily but simple acid-based titration. Why you particularly selected this method?
This method, due to I think it's quite easy to me because it's quite simple one. So because of that reason, I choose this one. What another we can also do from acid-based titration. Yes, that's the best one. But I choose this one particularly.
Yeah, that's what I am asking. So why you selected this method particularly? Why can't you choose acid-based titration method?
Hello, ma'am. Are you audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. That's what. Yeah, you can also use acid-based titration, which is also convenient. But I particularly took this one for my experiment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti, and thank you, Ramya, and thank you for all people who have interacted.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to the next presenter. Kusuma, are you okay with it now? Can you give us a presentation, Ms. Kusuma? Ms. Kusuma, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go ahead with your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Ma'am, can you please? Ma'am, is it visible?
No, you have to present now. You have to open the file first and then you have to present. keep it open in your background and then present.
Ma'am, it is showing, ma'am.
Is it visible for all the other participants? Is it only me whom it is not visible? Kindly let me know.
Not visible, ma'am.
No, madam, it's not visible.
Okay. Kusma ma'am, you need to work with it. Yes, sir, please.
Actually, she has to present. She has to go in the present now.
Yes, sir. Yes. Kusuma, kindly check that title bar below and press that. Yes. Now it is.
Now it's in. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
Thank you all. Okay, hello, good morning everyone. I am Kusma, lecturer, Department of Botany at Government First Grade College, Tumkur. So now I am ready to give presentation on physico-chemical examination of Namad Chilme water. So before knowing the physico-chemical examination, so we should know about the Namada Chilme. So it is a place located near Tumkuru district. Okay, so the name, the Namada Chilme, here we have found a small spring which is related to Ramayana. So once the Lord Rama, during his exile in the forest or the Vanvasa, he halted at this place on his way to Sri Lanka. The story says that Lord Rama wanted to apply Nama on his forehead, but since he didn't find any water, find water anywhere, he shot an arrow into the ground and the spring opened from the underground. So that is how the name to derived from the place Namada Chilume. It is also called Rama Namada Chilume. So he used that water for applying Nama on his forehead. Okay, so the water come out from a small hole in the ground. Even a foot impression of Rama also we can see in the Namal Chilme. It is a holy place in Tumkuru district. Okay, this spring is currently enclosed by the forest department to preserve it, and here we can also see number of deers, and this water is very pure, and I presently made this what we call project and related with the drinking water, how this water is related to potable water characteristic. Okay, so yes, now I am coming to physico-chemical parameters of water. We know that water is one of the most important natural resource available to mankind. Knowing the importance of water for sustenance of life, the need for conservation of water bodies, especially the freshwater bodies, is being realized everywhere in the world. So water quality refers to the chemical, physical, biological and radiological characteristic of water. So somewhere it is a measure of the condition of water related to the requirement of one or more biotic species or to any human need or purpose. So as for human, it is mainly related to drinking water. So all biological reactions occur in water, and it is the integrated system of biological metabolic reactions in aqueous solution that is essential for the maintenance of life. Okay, the some physico-chemical parameters like what I have studied and which are what I have studied in this project, which are only available in our lab, GFGC government small lab. That is, I have studied about pH and chlorine and hardness of water and dissolved oxygen. Okay, so pH is very much important. We know that it determines the soil quality, whether also it determines the water quality. Okay, so it is important to measure at the same time of chlorine residual, since somewhere the pH which also depend on the chlorine, somewhere like it is important to measure pH at the same time as the chlorine residual, since the efficiency of disinfection with the chlorine is highly pH dependent. So where the pH exceed 8.0, disinfection is less effective. To check that the pH is in the optimal range for disinfection with chlorine, simple test may be conducted in the field using comparators such as that are used for chlorine residual. So, and another parameter like chlorine, so we know that chlorine is a disinfectant. The disinfection of drinking water supplies constitute an important barrier against waterborne diseases. Although various disinfectants may be also used, but the chlorine is very effective and cheaper. Okay, so the efficiency and easy of measurement both in laboratories and in the field. So free chlorine is unstable in aqueous solution, and the chlorine content of water supplies may decrease rapidly, particularly at warm temperature. Exposure to the strong light or agitation will accelerate the rate of loss of free chlorine. So in the water samples should therefore be analyzed for free chlorine immediately on sampling, or not for stored for later testing. Okay, another kind of parameter like dissolved oxygen. So it is also very much important for potable water or to live some biological organisms. So biochemical oxygen demand is the amount of dissolved oxygen needed by aerobic biological organisms in a body of water to break down organic materials. Okay, so we know that the history beyond the Namaya Chilume water, and next the total dissolved oxygen, we knew it. So that biochemical oxygen demand is the amount of dissolved oxygen needed by the aerobic biological organisms in a body of water to break down organic materials given water sample at certain temperature over a specified time period. So lower the BOD indicates the water is good quality, and higher the BOD indicates water is polluted. So in the next parameter is total hardness. It is the property of water which prevents the lathering of soap. It is caused due to carbonates and sulfates of calcium and magnesium ion. If hardness is greater than 200 mg per liter, it is very hard water, and it is hard when we said 80 to 120 mg per liter, and the medium said 60 to 120 mg per 60 to 80, and the less than 60 is then it is said to be soft water. Okay, then these are the physical parameters what I have studied in my lab. So chemical parameters like pH, chlorine, dissolved oxygen, and hardness of water. So I mainly made this experiment with experiment which is compared with the drinking water quality as per IS 10500 2012 journal. Okay, so how I made this experiment, like sampling point. The sampling point is in Namaya Chilume, a small hole. So was uniform within the water body. The water is coming out from a small spring open from underground. The water samples from water body were collected in a place water is present. The spring water never dries up even in the summer. The water sample is collected from a small running channel, 1 liter plastic bottle. The sample is collected and brought to laboratory for physicochemical analysis. The dissolved oxygen was fixed in the field by collecting water sample in 300 ml BOD bottle as per the location we have collected, and brought it into laboratory for analysis. So then, so coming to this slide, these are the standards obtained by Indian standards drinking water qualities. So Indian standard says pH it requires within 6.5 to 8.5. So it is the acceptable value for drinking water, and there is no permissible value below the 6.5 and 8.5 pH. And the chloride which is required for acceptable value is 250 mg per liter, and permissible up to 1000 mg, but it is very hard to use. It is not good for health. And total dissolved oxygen 5 mg per liter, it is acceptable value, and permissible 13 mg per liter. And total hardness is 200 mg per liter, and 600 mg per liter it is permissible value. So within these are the only 4 parameters what I have studied. So in the next, what I observed in the Namaya Chilume water, which is compared with the highest of Indian standards of water quality. So what I got, the pH is 7, and the temperature, as when I collected in the water, I have tested the temperature about 25 degrees Celsius as per the timings. And chloride is about 28.28 mg per liter. It is very less. And total dissolved oxygen is about, I got 4.87 mg per liter. And total hardness which related to calcium carbonate, that is 14 mg per liter. Okay, coming to discussion, so we know that pH is very much important and it's so an important factor for measure alkalinity and acidity of a soil pollution. So in this case study, pH is lies between 6.5 and 7. The ideal pH for potable water quality is described in the range of 6.5 to 8.5 by ISI standards. Okay, then coming to temperature, we know that a rise in temperature of the water enhances the solubility rate of the minerals but decreases the solubility of oxygen and other gases, hence it is an important parameter for the survival of life. And chloride, it is an estimated by the Morse method by using silver nitrate. The taste threshold for chloride is dependent on the associated with cation is generally in the range of 200 to 300 mg per liter. The chloride concentration about 250 mg per liter is in a drinking water may cause corrosion in the distribution system. The chloride ions ability to form soluble salts with many metal ions prevents the formation of films that could prevent the further corrosion of metal surfaces. And in the present study, obtained result is 28.28 mg per liter. So as we know that chloride ion which form a metal ion which combine with the other metal ions and that may form calcium chloride and sodium chloride, and these are all which may cause the salty taste of water. The increase in chloride concentration as with the metal ions that change the taste of the water. And the next, the hardness of water, it is determined by the EDTA method. In alkaline condition, the degree of hardness of water has been classified in terms of equivalent calcium carbonate concentration. We know that the medium hardness is about 60 to 120. It is within 80 mg per liter considered as medium hardness, and hardness 80 to 120 is quite hard, and very hard about 180 mg per liter. So the Namala Chilme water sample has very much less of hardness, so that is about 14 mg per liter, and it has very less hardness, so that's why it is called soft water. And the next parameter is dissolved oxygen. In dissolved oxygen in natural and wastewater depends on physical, chemical and biological activity in a water body. The analysis for the dissolved oxygen is important in water pollution control and waste treatment process. So DO, that is dissolved oxygen parameter, used to assess quality of surface of water and to keep a check on stream pollution. It is the basis for BOD, which is an important parameter to evaluate pollution potential of waste. It is responsible for corrosively photosynthetic activity and septicity, and is necessary for all aerobic biological wastewater treatment processes. The acceptable limit of dissolved oxygen is 5 mg per liter, and the result of dissolved oxygen is 4.87 mg per liter. So the Namachilme dissolved oxygen is sufficient for the aquatic organisms to live. Okay. Then for the conclusion, that is the seasonal groundwater quality monitoring by various physico-chemical parameters, and by integrating them in very much necessary in order to determine and maintain the groundwater quality. So as per our present review paper undertaken to bring an acute awareness among the people about the quality of Namal Chilme water, this water has pH 7 and total hardness is less than acceptable limit, and chloride content also is very much less, and the hardness is very less, and the dissolved oxygen is also near to acceptable limit. So the Namachilme water is in all our physico-chemical parameter examination lies under potable water quality. So hence this water is safe for direct consumption of a human. Okay, so thank you all. And one more thing, what are the divine places or holy places in our country? Those are all have the good quality of water, but being a human being, so what we do by worshipping such water sources, so we are all polluting such water resources. If you let that places so for some time, the water is very pure, and undoubtedly we can drink that water. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Kusuma, for the presentation. And now the session is open for discussion.
Kusuma,
Yes, sir.
I have one
Yes, sir.
doubt.
Yes.
Actually, you studied only basic physical chemical aspect, better
yes,
research.
Yes, sir. This is too basic, sir. Because,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
See,
sir.
you said it is a potable and it is good water.
Yes, sir.
You tried drank this that water?
Yes, sir. I have drunk, sir. Hello?
Anything happened after drinking?
No, sir. Nothing, sir. Sir,
Anything happened after drinking?
I'm damn sure. I'm damn sure, sir. Nothing happened, sir. I have drunk this water
Because it is having
sir.
no. Okay, it is alkaline water. Nowadays, alkaline water is having a lot of value. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
but to adjust with this alkaline water, which are the concentrations we are looking, so those are also higher. Actually, by the health perspective, it is very, very good.
Yes, sir. So what are our
Yeah.
divine
So
holy
those things
water
also you need to be looking at that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, no, that's why you need to be go with some other experiments. Like, using that water, you need to be feed to the some of the people, age specific and sex specific, and you check it out. So what is the impact on them? It is not possible to adjust with each and every.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So in that way, you need to be come up with conclusions.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, ma'am, I would like to ask one question.
Yes, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm hearing.
Okay. Ma'am, some parameters you are missing, like content of fluoride,
Yes, sir.
content of metal in that water, metal content, heavy metal content in that water.
Yes, sir.
And without performing that test or that analysis, how can you say that water is pure water, or that water can be used for a drinking purpose?
Sir, I made this project for BSc students, and it is too basic project. But what I got the results for such parameters, like what are the parameters we can do in our laboratory. GFGC Government College, it is a small college. The some parameters what we do in practical classes, so that parameters are examined for such waters. So that's why we got such results, and I'm presenting this. So
Okay.
definitely, sir. I further do. Yeah, I'm interested,
Because
sir. I'm discussing
because there are
with
so many other parameters you
Yes,
have
sir.
missed actually.
Yes, sir.
There are 10 to 12 parameters actually when we analyze the water.
Yes, sir.
We have to perform that test: carbonate, then this fluoride, metal content.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Heavy metals and all are there, sir. I'm further interested, sir, by saying you, sir.
Okay.
Definitely, I will do in the next parameter study, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, do we have anyone else who would like to ask any questions? Okay, I think Kusma, you've got wonderful input from three nice professors here.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm very glad.
You have to incorporate that, and if you want, there are some soil analysis departments in a particular district. It will be there. In Tumkur also it is there. Soil and water analysis departments. If you do not have facilities in your laboratory, kindly give the sample to them. They will perform the results and they'll give you. You are supposed to give them that acknowledgements. You are supposed to mention them in your papers. And they will give you nice results, and your work will work out really well. I mean, it will be of value. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
I myself have been to Namachilume and I have drunk that water too, and I know it is fit for drinking. Kindly progress with that. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Now, okay. Kindly stop presenting and stop presenting, Kusuma. Okay, thank you. I should apologize to Miss Shrishti Singh. I didn't know that you were supposed to present the paper in place of Sharana Gowda Patil sir. You were already present. Now we will have you presenting. Kindly go ahead, unmute yourself, switch on your video and then start sharing.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, is it visible?
Yes, it is visible and you are audible, but we are unable to see you. Okay.
Ma'am, camera is on.
Okay, Baba, you carry on, It's okay, you present.
Okay, a very good afternoon to all. Myself, Shrishti Singh, I am SC student. First of all, I am very thankful to everyone for giving me opportunity to present my paper entitled as Nanotechnology Applications in Cosmetics, a review. Cosmetic is used to enhance our appearance, used by both women and men. In the old ages, it was believed that only the natural product can improve their appearance, but the industrialization has revolutionized this field. So, nanotechnology is evolved and cosmetic becomes environmental friendly now. Nanotechnology is a multidisciplinary field as it joins the information from various control science, material science, and science among others. The US Natural Protection Agency utilizes the definition created by National Nanotechnology Initiative. The term nanotechnology is clarified by a wide range of different advancements that nanotechnology covers, which depend on different sorts of physical substance and natural procedures acknowledged at nano level. Nanotechnology-based cosmeceuticals offer the advantage of diversity in product and increase bioavailability of active ingredients and increase the aesthetic appeal of cosmetic product with prolonged effects. So what are our objective? Our objective is to analyze the nanotechnology in cosmetic industry, importance of nanotechnology in cosmetic industry, discuss the controversy with nanotechnology and personal care products, and how nanotechnology is used in skin products and various other things. So first of all, what is the importance of nanotechnology in cosmetic industry? Using ingredients at nanoscale allow personal care product to penetrate deeper into the skin to visibly improve its appearance. The whole point behind cosmetic is the targeted delivery of the vitamin, botanical, and other active ingredient into the skin. The smaller their size, the better they are able to penetrate the skin outer layer in order to moisturize and soften wrinkles. Nanotechnology shows the movement in the field of innovative work by expanding the efficacy of the item through conveyance of inventive arrangements. Cosmeceuticals are viewed as the quickest developing portion of the individual consideration industry, and the utilization has risen radically throughout the years. Nanocosmeceuticals utilized for skin, hair, nail, and lip care for conditions like wrinkles, photoaging, hyperpigmentation, dandruff, and hair harm have came into across the board use. Novel nanocarriers like liposomes, neosomes, nanoemulsions, strong lipid nanoparticles, nanostructured lipid barrier, and nanospheres have supplanted the utilization of ordinary conveyance framework. Now we will discuss about the controversy with nano in cosmetic. Nanoscale ingredients can penetrate the upper layer of the skin, which improves the appearance of the skin by making it plumper and more youthful looking. Nanotechnology makes it possible to use some ingredients by encapsulating them that would otherwise cause irritation on their own. Most personal care products leveraging nanotechnology are more widely available in Europe and Asia. It appears that they are more open to using new technologies. L'Oreal launched the first nano-based product in 1997. L'Oreal launched the first nano-based product in infallible lipsticks. Nanoscale titanium dioxide and zinc oxide has a whitening effect by leveraging photonic effects to improve the appearance of the skin. So cosmetic. Cosmetic are the fastest growing segment of the personal care industry, and a number of topical cosmeceutical treatment for conditioning such as photoaging, hyperpigmentation, wrinkle and hair damage have come into widespread use. In the cosmeceutical arena, nanotechnology has played an important role. Cosmetics are defined by the FDA as article intended to be applied to the human body or any part thereof, cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness or altering the appearance. The word cosmeceuticals is used to define a product that fits the niche between a drug and cosmetic. Cosmeceutical are not characterized by the FDA, but this term is used by the skin scientist, physician and skin care professional to encourage the consumer to continue buying cosmetic products, especially anti-aging and sunscreen products, marketed by many manufacturers with some scientific claims and natural positioning as a way to emphasize that using these products is not only necessary but also natural. Cosmeceuticals are the fastest growing segment of the personal care industry. Cosmeceutical formulation now have expanded from skin to body to hair, and a number of topical cosmeceutical treatment for conditions such as photoaging, hyperpigmentation, wrinkle and hair damage have come into widespread use. Nanotechnology-based cosmetics. Beautifiers are characterized by FDA as article expected to be applied to the human body or any part thereof, purifying, decorating, advancing, allure, or changing the appearance. Cosmeceutical is utilized to characterize an item that fits the speciality between a medication and beauty care products. Cosmeceuticals are quickest developing portion of the individual consideration industry. Ongoing looks into the concentrating on cosmeceutical items features solid development point of the few in the coming year, as indicated by them intending as a fast compound as indicated by them extending at a fast compound yearly development pace of 7.7%. The worldwide cosmeceutical market will reach $31.84 billion by 2016. Nanoparticles in cosmetics. So some of the nanotechnology based innovations are nanoemulsions, which are transparent, have unique tactile and texture properties. Nanocapsules, which are used in skincare product, nanopigment that are transparent and increase the efficiency of the sunscreen products. Liposomes formulation, which contain small vesicles consisting of conventional cosmetic material that protect oxygen or light sensitive cosmetic ingredient. Neosomes, nanocrystal, solid lipid nanoparticle, carbon and nanotubes, fullerenes and dendrimers. The primary advantage of using nanoparticle in cosmeceuticals include improvement in stability of cosmetic industry by encapsulating within the nanoparticles. Efficient protection of the skin from harmful ultraviolet rays. Aesthetic pleasing products of active mineral allow them to applied without leaving a noticeable white cast. Targeting of active ingredients to the desired site and controlled release of active ingredients for prolonged effect. The major class of nano cosmeceuticals are hair care, nail care, skin care and lip care. Recent advantages in nano product regulation. As of late, US FDA has distributed an import alert 66 to 38 for healthy skin item marked as anti-aging creams. This is on the ground that there are various healthy skin items in the market which guarantee that the item balance, retard or control the maturing procedure. As per US FDA, a case for example particle ingest and extend, applying upward strain to lift wrinkles upward is a case for an inward auxiliary change that would as a rule cause an item to be a medication. FDA has expressed such cases as are unlawful on corrective marking. So what are the problem being addressed? Nanotechnology is the science of manipulating atoms and molecules in the nanoscale 80,000 times smaller than the width of human hair. The world market for the product that contain nanomaterial is expected to reach $2.6 trillion by 2015. The use of nanotechnology has stretched across various streams of science, from electronics to medicine, and has now found application in the field of cosmetic by taking the name of nanocosmetics. The widespread influence of nanotechnology in the cosmetic industry is due to the enhanced property attained by the particle at the nano level, including color transparency and solubility. The problem being faced or addressed is related also to the toxicity of nanoparticles. Nanoparticles from various cosmeceuticals product applied on the skin can have toxic effect if reaching to the bloodstream. A research on toxicity of TiO2 nanoparticle demonstrated that when nano-sized TiO2 administered subsequently to pregnant mice, they transfer to the offspring and result in the brain damage and reduce sperm production in the male's offspring. Various researchers have shown that TiO2 nanoparticle can produce free radical and cause cell toxicity in test tube studies when exposed to UV light. Studies have shown that cobalt chromium nanoparticles can destroy human fibroblast cells across an intact cellular barrier. If nanoparticles are inhaled and eaten accidentally or absorbed through skin, they could cause skin and lung damage, and organ toxicity can harm unborn children. Silver nanoparticles are used in cosmeceuticals for their antimicrobial activity. Concentration of silver that is lethal for bacteria is also lethal for both keratinocytes and fibroblasts. The cosmeceutical industry debates that consumer risks are low as there is no evidence that nanoparticles from the product penetrate healthy, intact and adult skin. So what are the solutions and scientific validity? Solutions of zinc oxide and titanium dioxide particle have been widely used for many years as UV filter in sunscreen. Products using nanoparticle of ZNO or TiO2 are transparent, so have increased aesthetic appeal, are less smelly, less greasy and more absorbable by the skin. Many sunscreen and moisturizer available now use this nanoparticle, including products from Boots, Avon, The Body Shop, L'Oreal, Nivea and Unilever. Scientific validity. The scientific validity of the nanotechnology in the cosmetic show study, including those carried out within the framework of European Research Program, Nanoderm have clearly shown that nanopigment do not cross the skin barrier of the either healthy skin or compromised skin. These here I am listed two of the patent of the nanotechnology in cosmetics. What are the benefits of the nanotechnology in cosmetics? The two main uses for nanoparticle in cosmetic product are UV filtering and delivery of the active ingredient. Titanium oxide and zinc oxide are both used extensively in sunscreen to prevent UV damage to the skin. The nanoformulation of these materials have been shown repeatedly to give much better performance than larger particles reflecting visible light and absorbing UV with very high efficiency. Lipid nanoparticles are particularly effective as they can merge with the lipid bilayer in cell membrane, facilitating the delivery of the compound which would otherwise not be able to enter the cell. So what is the conclusion? Growth of cosmeceutical industry is increasing day by day as the cosmeceutical market is highly diversified with the product coming from major and small manufacturers and local companies around the world. Nanotechnology represents the key technology of the 21st century, offering excellent opportunity for both research and businesses. The rapid spread of commercialization of nanotechnology in cosmeceuticals have given rise to great technical and economical aspirations, but also a question about the emerging risk to health and safety of the consumer. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrishti, for presenting a nice review of nano compounds in cosmetic industry. Now the session is open for discussion.
I would like to ask one question, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, you mentioned only about zinc oxide and titanium dioxide nanoparticles can be used in cosmetic. but there are so many nanoparticles can be used nowadays. So I think in Rihu that is missing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just reviewing this paper that nanotechnology in cosmetics become friendly nowadays. So instead of in the old ages, it was believed that only the natural product can improve the appearance. But now the industry is revolutionized and evolved. So the nanotechnology becomes the most friendly in the environment nowadays.
Okay, okay. But ma'am, what is the cost of that cosmetic which contain nanoparticles? Is it costly as compared to natural sources?
Yes, sir, you can say, because natural product we can obtain from nature mostly. So these are in comparison to natural particles, it is costly.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you.
Sister, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
See, whole world is following Ayurveda
Yes, sir.
for maintaining our beauty or our whatever dermatological issues. Why we need to be run behind this nanotechnology? Are using nanotechnology in cosmetics?
Sorry, sir, can you repeat it once again?
No, the Ayurveda taken nowadays leading pharmaceutical sector. Okay, you cannot afford Ayurvedic products.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
To allopathy or whichever other products were there. Okay, so you were saying it is also one of the advantage. But
Yes,
world,
sir.
For example,
world is
Patanjali
following
products.
Ayurveda rather than what are. Yes, yeah, like that.
Yeah.
So why will be focus more on nanotechnologies with the cosmetic aspects?
Sir, because nowadays incorporation of nanotechnology in cosmeceutical is aimed at making incense of perfume last longer, sunscreen to protect the skin, anti-aging cream to fight back the ears, like that, because it enhances more to the skin. So that's why we prefer nanotechnology based particles in cosmetics.
Ma'am, it can change
Ayurveda
appearance
cannot
of
give all
skin
those.
or
Can give, sir, but it in comparison to Ayurveda, it is last longer.
Yeah, exactly. You were right. You were right.
it means it is better than Ayurvedic Ayurveda products.
We can't say,
Yeah,
sir.
because the formulation is as per the yeah. In Ayurveda, no, we are failure in making exact formulations. Okay, so till now we are working with the vague. So that's why it is not 100% evidence with the positive outcome or remarkable outcome of the findings. That is the one drawback. So that's why people are working. The Department of Ayush is a lot of money they are giving to make out all this work with the proper formulation and proper medications.
Okay. It means these products are verified by or tested.
Yeah, sir.
Okay.
Yes, because most of the pharmaceutical or cosmeceutical companies are there, no? So it is tested by FDA only. As per their regulations only, they do market.
Excuse me, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
are you audible, sir?
Yes, Ramya.
Yes.
Sir, it's ma'am. Most of our Ayurvedic products are not originally they're Ayurvedic, ma'am. We can't prepare any type of Ayurvedic products without using any types of chemicals.
Yeah, but as a business point of view, you are right. But if you go through real literature, definitely we have all those.
Another one thing, sir, Ayurvedic doesn't work for all the type of skin texture. It may be vary from person to person. In some people, it works. It takes a lot of days because nowadays what we people are accepting is that the instant beauty. We have to get glow in a 1 week. We have to get glow in 1 year, like that.
Yeah.
Because of that reason, nowadays we are looking a big deal.
No need of going any cosmetics. Just you use everyday turmeric. That is quite enough. No need of any other cosmetics in your.
But what happened in the cinema industries, in other industries, they couldn't wait for a longer term. They need an instant beauty.
Yes.
So
the population is like that, no? So that's why the products like any beauty care. So they are emerging like anything. So that's why even nanotechnology is also taken in that step only.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Madhukar sir, Dr. Patil and Ramya. Shrishti, I have one question for you. Actually, I had myself done a research review paper on toxicity of many nanoparticles. And as Madhukar sir told, why only titanium oxide and zinc dioxide? Because they are mainly used in cosmetic industry. They are largely used because they are transparent when they become nano. So even cricketers use them so that they do not get burned. But we prefer them over natural products because they are easy to handle. You cannot apply either turmeric or milk cream or other methods of beautifying agents and go outside. For that we prefer these. But we do not know about the toxicity of these nanoparticles. That's exactly what you have touched upon. They may lead to cancer. They may in future be very dangerous. So what do you conclude? What do you think we should do? Should we go for artificial cosmetics or cosmeceuticals, or should we go for natural? What's your conclusion from this particular review?
Actually, ma'am, the cosmeceutical industry's debate is going on that consumer risk are low nowadays because they are using the safest way of applying the nanoparticles into the cosmetics. So there are many researchers as a evidence that nanoparticle from the product that do not penetrate the healthy and adult skin. So that's the thing.
But when you prepare or synthesize a compound to a nano level, they are sufficient enough so that they can penetrate into the cell, because your cell pores are nano. So they are very easy. It is very nice for people to tell. The big leaders in the world are cosmeceutical industries. They are minting money. They are minting money, and now they have moved on to men also. So men become fairer and all such things. So it's the biggest industry and industrial gimmick as far as I think. I don't know about what other people feel, but okay.
As an example, yes, ma'am. As an example, silver nanoparticle are also used in the cosmeceuticals for their antimicrobial activity.
Yes.
So like that way.
Yeah. That's a nice presentation and a nice discussion. I appreciate each one of you who have participated and actively for this session. And thank you. Thank you very much. And this whole session was recorded, and we are forwarding it to the judges. And do we have any suggestions? Are we okay with this kind of a session? Because we never have paper presentations in other conferences to this extent. This is very nice. I felt every presenter was given nice chance to present it completely. Are we okay with this? Can we do this tomorrow also like this?
Okay, ma'am. It's very nice. Yes, ma'am.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you all tomorrow also. And can we end this session here?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. We will end the meeting now. Yeah. ಬರಲ್ಲ